Have you ever asked yourself why some people fight for love while others take it for granted? Why does one person chase, protect, and cherish while another becomes careless, distant, and blind to what they have? These are not random mysteries of the heart. They are patterns, patterns written into human psychology. And when you understand them, you unlock something powerful, the ability to inspire value, respect, and love without begging for it. Now listen closely, because what I'm about to share is not just about relationships. It is about life. It is about the way people treat you in every space. At home, at work, and in love. If you've ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or overlooked, you're going to find answers here. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, you will discover a truth that changes everything. A truth that makes someone fight for you instead of drifting away. A truth that stops you from ever being taken for granted again. But before we step into that, let me ask you one more thing. Have you ever noticed how we often treasure what is rare, yet neglect what is always within reach? Think about it. People line up for hours for something limited, but walk past what is abundant every day without a second glance. Diamonds are just stones, but they are valued because they are scarce. Water is life itself, but most never pause to appreciate it until they lose access to it. The same psychology applies to love, to respect, to value. What is always available begins to feel ordinary to the human mind. And that is why so many relationships fall into the trap of being taken for granted. It is not that the person has changed completely. It's that the brain has started to categorize you as always there. The spark of urgency fades. The instinct to fight for you weakens. But here is the truth you must hold in your heart. You are not ordinary. You are not replaceable. You are not a background character in anyone's life. You are the main character of your own story. And the moment you remember that, the energy shifts. Because when you see yourself as valuable, the world begins to mirror it back to you. Still, let me be very honest with you. Many people forget this. They pour out so much love, so much giving, that they lose sight of their own worth. They try to hold on tighter when someone drifts away. They chase, they beg, they compromise. And instead of drawing the person closer, it creates the opposite effect. The psychology is simple. When something seems too easy to obtain, the human brain assigns it less value. It's not fair, but it's real. So ask yourself, have you been making it too easy for someone to overlook you? Have you been showing up for someone who does not show up for you? Have you been giving endlessly while receiving crumbs? If your heart whispered yes, then this video is the moment you shift everything. Because what you'll learn today is how to become someone he fights for, respects, and never dares to take for granted. And here's the reward I promised you for watching until the end. By the time this video finishes, you won't just understand what makes him value you. You'll carry the keys to make anyone in your life recognize your worth. Whether it's in love, friendship, or career, these principles will elevate the way people see you. That is the gift waiting for you. But let's slow down here, because before we talk about action, we need to talk about truth. The first truth is this: value starts within. You cannot demand from the outside what you do not feel on the inside. If you don't see yourself as a prize, no one else will. If you don't carry yourself like someone worth fighting for, no one will fight for you. People mirror energy. Psychology proves it. Humans are wired to reflect the treatment they are given. Think of the people you admire, the ones you respect deeply. They never beg for respect, do they? They carry themselves with quiet confidence. They don't chase attention, yet attention finds them. Why? Because they radiate self-worth. They embody it in their posture, their words, their choices. And subconsciously, everyone else recognizes it and rises to meet them at that standard. That is the beginning of your journey here. Not changing him, not chasing him, not fixing him. The beginning is changing you, your energy, your belief, your standard. Because when you do, something extraordinary happens. The same man who once overlooked you begins to notice. The same man who once assumed you'd always be there begins to wonder if he could lose you. And the fight awakens inside him. So remember this opening truth as we go deeper. Love that is begged for never lasts, but love that is inspired by respect, by value, by self-worth, that is unshakable. That is what makes him fight for you, not because you demanded it, but because his psychology left him no choice. Stay with me until the end, because what's coming next will show you exactly why people take others for granted, and how you can break that cycle forever. Every human being carries one silent question inside: am I valuable? This question lives in the heart of a child. in the soul of a teenager, and in the mind of every adult. It is not spoken, but it is felt. Every choice, every relationship, every dream is somehow connected to this hidden need to be valued. Think about it. Why do people chase success? Why do they work late nights? Why do they seek recognition? Why do they want to be loved? It's not only about money, fame, or romance. It is about the feeling that they matter, that they are not invisible, that their existence holds weight in this world. Psychologists call it the need for significance. Without it, the human spirit feels empty. And here's the truth. When someone makes you feel like you matter, you are drawn to them. You respect them. You don't let go of them easily. Because deep down, they answer that silent question inside you. Now, apply this to love. When a man feels that you see him as valuable, as strong, as capable, he is pulled toward you. He begins to fight for your attention. He wants to keep proving himself because the bond gives him something he craves, meaning. But here's the other side. When he no longer feels the need to prove anything, when he senses that no matter what he does, you will always stay, that inner drive begins to fade. The challenge disappears. The instinct to protect weakens. This doesn't mean you play games or pretend to be someone you're not. It means you understand how human psychology works. People defend what gives them value. They fight for what makes them feel significant. They hold tightly to whatever feeds their sense of worth. That is why some men chase harder, give more, and respect deeper when they believe they have something rare in their life. Let's take an example outside of relationships. Imagine you're working on a project. If your boss constantly praises you, recognizes your skills, and highlights your importance, you show up with energy. You work harder, not because you have to, but because you feel valued. But if your effort goes unnoticed, if you're treated like anyone could replace you, slowly your motivation dies. You stop pushing, you stop caring. It is not laziness, it is human psychology. The same principle breathes inside love. If you want someone to fight for you, they must feel that being with you is meaningful. Not routine, not guaranteed, but meaningful. He needs to believe that your presence in his life is a blessing, not a background. And here's the beauty. When you carry yourself with dignity, when you honor your own worth, you don't have to say a word. He senses it. It's in the way you walk, the way you set standards, the way you don't allow disrespect. Your energy tells him, being with me is a privilege, not a right. That single belief can change the entire dynamic of a relationship. But let's go deeper. Why do humans instinctively fight for value? Because our brains are wired for survival. From the beginning of time, tribes fought over territory, over resources, over identity. What was valuable was defended. What had no value was abandoned. Even today, that wiring hasn't changed. When a man feels that you are precious, he taps into that survival instinct. He guards you. He protects you. He puts effort into keeping you close. On the other hand, if he feels no risk of losing you, if he senses no scarcity, then complacency creeps in. Not because he is cruel, but because the human brain saves energy where it sees no competition. If the prize seems certain, the fight disappears. That is why you must understand this. Your value is not something he gives you. It is something you already have. It is something you must hold within yourself so strongly that he cannot ignore it. The moment you embody that belief, you light up a part of his psychology that tells him, this is worth fighting for. This is worth keeping. So ask yourself today, are you living like someone who knows their worth? Do you walk into a room as if your presence has power? Do you love yourself enough to expect respect, not beg for it? Because the truth is, the way you answer these questions silently teaches him how to treat you. And once he feels your worth, once he senses that you are not someone he can easily replace, the battle inside him awakens. The part of him that longs to protect, to provide, to hold on, it comes alive. Not because you forced it, but because his own psychology demanded it. Never forget, humans will fight for what they believe is valuable. They will ignore what feels common. The decision is yours. Which category will you place yourself in? One of the most painful feelings is realizing that the love you give so freely is not appreciated. You give your time, your energy, your loyalty, yet somehow it begins to feel invisible. At first, the relationship was full of effort, passion, and care. But over time, something shifted. The excitement faded. The attention lessened. What once felt extraordinary now feels ordinary. And slowly, you start to feel taken for granted. This does not happen overnight. It creeps in silently. In the beginning, every word matters, every moment counts, and every gesture is noticed. But as familiarity grows, the human mind adjusts. What was once new becomes routine. What was once rare becomes expected, and what was once deeply appreciated is suddenly assumed. It's not because you are less worthy. It's because the brain has a mechanism that adapts to what is constant. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. It means people quickly grow used to whatever they experience often. Think of the excitement of buying something new. At first, it feels special, but after a while, it blends into daily life. The thrill fades, even though the item still has value. The same psychology plays out in relationships. When your presence is always guaranteed, when your giving has no limits, when you are always available, something dangerous happens. The mind begins to see you as a permanent fixture, not as a blessing. And when people believe something is permanent, they stop fighting for it. This is the root of being taken for granted. It is not always about cruelty or bad intentions. It is about human conditioning. What is always within reach stops feeling urgent. What is easily obtained stops being pursued. What is guaranteed stops being treasured. But here's the truth you must never forget. The fact that the mind adapts does not mean you must accept neglect. Understanding the psychology is the first step. Changing the dynamic is the second. Because if you don't recognize this pattern, you may begin to believe a lie, that you are not enough, that you are unworthy, that you must do more to earn love. And nothing is more dangerous than carrying that false belief. When someone starts overlooking your effort, the natural response is often to give more, to try harder, to prove your place. But psychology works differently. The more predictable you become, the less the brain registers your presence as special. The cycle deepens. You give more, they appreciate less. You chase harder, they withdraw further. And slowly, your spirit begins to break. But here is where the shift must happen. Instead of pouring out more, you must step back and see clearly. Being taken for granted says more about the other person's perception than about your worth. Their blindness does not erase your value. Their neglect does not reduce your power. It simply reveals that their mind has fallen into the trap of comfort. Comfort is the silent killer of passion. Comfort whispers you will always be there. Comfort tells the mind no need to put effort, no need to risk, no need to fight. And once comfort takes over, the relationship becomes unbalanced. One gives endlessly, while the other assumes endlessly. Breaking this cycle starts with awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. You must understand why it happens before you can correct it. And here is the deeper truth. People only begin to fight for something when they sense that its presence is not guaranteed. Scarcity awakens value. Loss awakens appreciation. The thought of "I might not have this forever" creates urgency. Think of how people react when they almost lose something. A close call with health makes them treasure life again. Losing a job makes them grateful for work. Being on the edge of losing someone they love makes them realize what that person meant all along. This is not coincidence. It is psychology. The human heart often sees the truth most clearly when it faces the risk of losing it. So when you feel taken for granted, the answer is not to shout louder, to give more, or to lower yourself. The answer is to recognize your value and stop feeding the cycle of comfort. Step into your own strength. Reclaim your own time. Create space. Because in that space, the other person is forced to notice the difference. And when they notice, the comfort is shaken. And when comfort breaks, appreciation can return. But here's the most important part. Never wait for someone else's recognition to confirm your worth. If you let another person, blindness, dictate how you see yourself, you hand over all your power. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to see it. A diamond remains a diamond, even in the dark. Being taken for granted is painful, yes, but it can also be a turning point. It can be the moment you stop living for someone else's validation and start living from your own truth. And when you live from that truth, everything changes. Because the world treats you according to the energy you radiate. If you radiate worth, people adjust. If you radiate scarcity, people chase. If you radiate strength, people respect. Never allow yourself to become background music in someone else's life. You were meant to be the main melody. You are meant to be heard, seen, and valued. And when you carry that belief within you, no one can keep taking you for granted. There is a truth that changes everything in love, in success, and in life itself. The way you see yourself sets the standard for how others see you. If you see yourself as small, others will treat you as small. If you carry yourself as worthy, others will rise to that level. Your inner belief becomes the mirror that the world reflects back at you. Most people forget this. They look outward for confirmation. They wait for someone else to recognize them before they recognize themselves. They hand over their power, hoping that love, praise, or approval will finally make them feel complete. But here's the danger. When your worth depends on someone else's opinion, you are never free. You are always at the mercy of their moods, their actions, and their choices. Self-worth is not about arrogance. It is not about shouting, demanding, or forcing respect. It is quiet, steady, unshakable. It lives in the way you hold your head high. It lives in the decisions you make. It lives in the limits you set for what you will and will not accept. And when someone comes into contact with that energy, they cannot ignore it. The strongest relationships are built not on neediness, but on mutual recognition of value. When you know your worth, you don't cling. You don't chase. You don't beg. You simply stand firm in who you are, and the right people respond to that strength. In fact, psychology shows that confidence creates attraction. Humans are wired to respect those who respect themselves. Think of the people who inspire you most. They are not the ones who bend over backward to be liked. They are not the ones who seek constant validation. They are the ones who carry themselves with certainty. They walk into a room and you feel their presence before they speak a single word. That is the power of self-worth. It commands attention without asking for it. And here's the beauty. When you embody self-worth, you shift the dynamic in every relationship. A man begins to look at you differently. He sees that you are not afraid to stand alone. He realizes that your happiness does not depend on his approval. And in that realization, something powerful awakens in him. He begins to fight for a place in your life because he senses that you do not need him, you choose him. That difference is everything. Need creates pressure, choice creates value. When someone knows you can stand strong on your own, they no longer take you for granted. They understand that being close to you is not automatic, it is earned. That is why self-worth is not just a mindset, it is the foundation of lasting respect. But how do you build it? It begins in silence. It begins in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. Do you speak to yourself with kindness, or do you tear yourself down? Do you celebrate your progress, or do you only focus on your flaws? Because the words you whisper to yourself shape your belief, and that belief shapes how you show up in the world. Every time you compromise your values to please someone, your self-worth weakens. Every time you accept less than you deserve, your inner voice learns that you are not valuable. But every time you honor your standards, every time you walk away from disrespect, every time you choose growth over comfort, you teach your heart a new story. I matter. I am enough. I deserve more. And once you believe that story deeply, others begin to believe it too. A man senses it in your silence, in your boundaries, in your independence. He realizes that your love is precious, not guaranteed. And when love feels precious, he fights to keep it. Self-worth is magnetic. It pulls the right people toward you and pushes the wrong ones away. It filters your world without you needing to do much. Because people who do not respect value cannot survive long around someone who knows theirs. They either adjust or they fade. And the ones who adjust, the ones who rise to meet your standard, are the ones worth keeping. Remember, no one can consistently honor you more than you honor yourself. If you keep showing the world that you are willing to settle, the world will keep handing you less. But if you stand tall, if you live as though you are a rare gift, people will treat you as one. That is not ego, it is truth. The world responds to the energy you project. So hold this close. Your worth does not come from his attention, his words, or his choices. Your worth is already written in you the moment you believe it, the moment you carry it, everything changes. He sees it, he feels it. And that is when he begins to realize losing you would mean losing something priceless. When you live in that truth, you never again have to demand love or beg for respect. They flow to you naturally because your self-worth leaves no other option. That is the power within you, waiting to be claimed. There is a law that governs not just relationships, but every part of human life. It is the law of scarcity. The simple truth is this: people value what feels limited, and they take for granted what feels endless. This law shapes behavior more than most realize. And once you understand it, you begin to see why some fight for love while others grow careless. Think about anything rare in this world. Gold is just metal, yet people travel oceans and risk everything to find it. limited editions, rare collectibles, unique experiences. People pay fortunes to claim them, not because these things are always more useful, but because the mind is wired to chase what feels scarce. Scarcity awakens desire. Scarcity fuels effort. Scarcity creates urgency. Now, apply this same principle to relationships. When your presence is always available, when your time is given without pause, when your love flows without limits, the mind registers it as abundant. And abundant things, no matter how precious, start to feel ordinary. But when there is a sense of rarity, when a man realizes that your attention is not infinite, when he feels that your energy is not guaranteed, something powerful happens. He begins to value it more. He begins to fight for it. This does not mean withholding love or playing manipulative games. It means recognizing that your time, your energy, and your presence are treasures, not commodities. When you treat them as valuable, others are forced to do the same. The law of scarcity is not about pretending. It is about honoring your worth so deeply that you no longer give it away without thought. Scarcity creates pursuit because it awakens fear, the fear of loss. Psychologists have studied this for decades. People are more motivated to avoid losing something than to gain something new. It is called loss aversion. And in love, it works the same way. A man may not notice every detail of your giving, but the moment he feels he might lose it, his instincts shift. The comfort breaks, the urgency returns. Think of how often people only realize someone's importance after distance enters the picture. When you stop answering every call immediately, when you no longer rearrange your entire life to fit around his, when you place yourself at the center instead of the background, he feels the shift. And that shift stirs something primal inside him, the realization that your love is not unlimited, that he must show up or risk losing it. The truth is, scarcity sharpens attention. Imagine water flowing freely from a tap. You hardly think about it. But if you are in the desert and every drop is rare, suddenly each sip feels like gold. The same mind that ignored it before now treasures it deeply. This is not about changing your essence. It is about changing how you allow your essence to be experienced. So ask yourself, have you been giving in a way that makes your love feel endless? Have you made your presence so constant that it blends into the background? If so, the law of scarcity has been working against you. But the good news is, you can reverse it at any moment. By reclaiming your time, by creating space, by focusing on your own growth, you naturally restore the sense of value around you. A man will fight for what he fears to lose. He will step up when he realizes that you are not an endless source of comfort, but a rare presence that elevates his life. And this realization does not come from words. It comes from actions. It comes from the way you protect your energy. It comes from the way you say no to disrespect. It comes from the way you choose your own peace over constant giving. Scarcity teaches people to pay attention. It forces the heart to wake up. And when a man feels that, your love is something he must continually earn, not something he can take for granted. He begins to fight differently. He invests, he protects, he appreciates. But remember, this law works both ways. If you lower yourself and make your value abundant in the wrong way, he will relax into comfort and stop fighting. But if you stand tall and treat yourself as rare, his psychology adapts. The mind cannot ignore scarcity. It is hardwired to chase it. So hold on to this truth. Your time is not endless, your energy is not unlimited, and your love is not something to be wasted. When you live with that awareness, you awaken desire. You spark urgency. You remind him that being close to you is not automatic. It is earned. And when he feels that, he begins to fight for you. Not because you asked, not because you pleaded, but because his own instincts leave him no choice. That is the power of the law of scarcity. It transforms comfort into urgency, neglect into attention, and taking for granted into fighting to keep. There is one truth that separates relationships that thrive from those that collapse: respect. And respect is not given freely. It is built through boundaries. Without boundaries, love becomes unbalanced. Without boundaries, one person gives endlessly while the other takes without limit. And over time, the absence of boundaries turns passion into entitlement. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishments. They are healthy lines that protect your value. They are silent rules that teach others how to treat you. Every time you set one, you send a clear message: I honor myself, and I expect you to honor me too. Most people struggle with boundaries because they fear losing love. They think, if I say no, if I stand up for myself, maybe he will walk away. But here's the reality. If your limits cause someone to leave, they were never going to respect you in the first place. A love that only survives when you sacrifice your dignity is not love, it is dependency. True connection grows stronger when boundaries are present because they create trust, clarity, and balance. Psychology proves this. Humans need structure to feel secure. Even children test rules, not because they want chaos, but because they want to know where the limits are. In the same way, adults unconsciously test boundaries in relationships. If you allow constant disrespect, the behavior will continue. If you respond with strength, the behavior adjusts. People may not admit it, but they respect what they cannot walk over. Boundaries are not about controlling someone else, they are about controlling yourself, your actions, your choices, your response. You cannot force anyone to respect you, but you can refuse to allow disrespect in your life. That decision alone changes everything. Consider how you feel when someone protects their time at first. It may frustrate you, but deep down you admire it. You see that they know their worth. You see that they do not give themselves away cheaply. That admiration comes from the boundary, and it works the same in love. When a man knows you have limits, he understands that being close to you is not automatic. He must align with your standard to remain in your life. Think about the alternative. When no boundaries exist, what happens? The relationship becomes heavy with imbalance. You may feel drained, unseen, and unappreciated. You give more to cover the emptiness, but the cycle repeats. The absence of boundaries teaches him the wrong lesson, that no matter what he does, you will always accept it. And over time, that illusion leads him to stop fighting for you because he believes he doesn't have to. But when you set clear boundaries, the energy shifts. Suddenly he realizes that your love has conditions, not conditions based on control, but conditions based on respect. He sees that you are not afraid to walk away from behavior that dishonors you. And that realization creates urgency. It forces him to decide, rise to your standard or lose your presence. Boundaries are not only about big issues like betrayal or disrespect. They are also about the small, daily choices that shape how you feel, how much time you give, how much effort you accept, how you expect to be spoken to, how you allow your needs to be met. Every boundary communicates your value. Every boundary reminds him that your love is a gift, not a guarantee. But here's the most important part. Boundaries must be consistent. If you set them once, but allow them to be broken, they lose their power. Consistency teaches respect. Inconsistency teaches manipulation. A man respects a standard that never changes. He doubts one that bends every time he tests it. You do not have to shout, argue, or fight to set a boundary. You simply act. You simply step back when your lines are crossed. You simply protect your peace instead of sacrificing it. This quiet strength often speaks louder than any words could, because actions are harder to ignore than promises. When you live with boundaries, you also experience a deeper gift. You begin to feel free. You no longer carry the burden of pleasing everyone. You no longer lose yourself trying to keep someone else comfortable. You discover the peace of knowing that you can love fully without losing yourself in the process, and that freedom makes your presence even more powerful. Men respect women who respect themselves. They fight for the ones who set standards. They treasure the ones who are not afraid to say, "This is what I deserve," because deep down, they know that if you respect yourself this deeply, then being chosen by you is an honor. So never fear setting boundaries. They do not push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones. They separate those who only take from those who are ready to give. And most importantly, they teach a man that your love is not something to be handled carelessly. Boundaries are the silent backbone of lasting relationships. They turn comfort into respect. They turn neglect into effort. They turn taking for granted into fighting to keep. Protect your value and watch how the world learns to protect it too. There comes a moment in every relationship when words are no longer enough. What speaks louder is energy. Energy is invisible, yet it is felt stronger than anything you say. It moves through your presence, your choices, and the way you carry yourself. And when your energy changes, everything around you begins to change with it. When you live with boundaries, a subtle but powerful shift takes place. You no longer come across as someone desperate to hold on. Instead, you radiate calm strength. You radiate independence. You radiate the message that you are whole on your own, and anyone in your life is there because you allow it, not because you depend on it. This energy is magnetic. It makes people lean in because it signals confidence without words. Psychology teaches us that humans are deeply influenced by nonverbal cues. A single shift in body language, tone, or attitude can alter how someone perceives you. If you constantly move from a place of fear of being abandoned, fear of losing love, your energy carries that tension. It creates pressure. But when you move from self-assurance, your energy is light, and that lightness draws others closer. Men feel this difference strongly. They sense when you are chasing and when you are grounded. They sense when you are clinging and when you are centered. And the truth is, no one fights for what feels heavy and draining, but they will fight for what feels powerful and rare. That is the power of the energy shift. This shift happens when you stop giving from emptiness and start giving from fullness. When you fill your own life with purpose, joy, and growth, you no longer look to someone else to complete you. You stop waiting for them to create your happiness. And as you do, your energy transforms from need to abundance. That transformation changes how people treat you. Think about it. When someone enters a room with heavy, desperate energy, you feel it instantly. It pulls you down. But when someone walks in with peace, with confidence, with self-love, you also feel it. It lifts you up. Relationships work the same way. Your energy either creates attraction or pushes it away. A man who once overlooked you suddenly begins to notice when your energy shifts. He feels the difference when you no longer revolve around him. He feels the absence when you stop overextending. And because humans are wired to chase what feels scarce and valuable, his instinct pushes him to come closer. Not because you begged, but because your new energy leaves him no choice. But let's be clear, this shift is not about pretending. It is not about acting strong while secretly breaking inside. Real transformation begins when you decide to nurture yourself. It begins when you pour into your own dreams, your own growth, your own peace. It begins when you remember that your life is bigger than one relationship. Energy never lies. If you pretend to value yourself, but still allow disrespect, the mask will fall. But when you truly believe in your worth, when you truly honor your standards, your energy speaks for you. It tells the world, I know who I am. I know what I bring, and I am not afraid to stand alone. That kind of energy is irresistible. It forces people to see you differently. It makes them realize they cannot treat you carelessly because you will not stay where you are not respected. And in that realization, they either rise or they leave. Either way, you win because your energy attracts only what aligns with your worth. The energy shift also protects you from falling into cycles of overgiving. When you stand in strength, you no longer pour out more than you receive. You no longer chase someone who is not meeting you halfway. Instead, you create balance, and balance is where love thrives. Remember this, people may ignore words, but they cannot ignore energy. A calm silence can be louder than 1,000 arguments. A quiet withdrawal of your presence can shake someone more than endless pleading. Energy communicates what language cannot. And when your energy says, I am valuable, I am whole, I am not afraid, it changes the dynamic instantly. So if you want someone to fight for you, stop pouring all your effort into convincing them with words. Shift your energy, pull back into your power, focus on yourself. Build your life so strong that they feel the difference between being part of it and being left out of it. That gap will speak louder than anything you could ever say. The most powerful change you can make is not outside, it is inside. Because once your energy transforms, the world has to respond. And the ones who truly see your value will fight harder than ever to keep their place in your life. Energy creates attraction, but it is consistency that builds trust. Anyone can impress for a moment. Anyone can speak beautifully for a day. But true respect, true loyalty comes when actions repeat over time. Consistency is proof. It is the bridge between words and reality. Without it, even the strongest energy fades. With it, love becomes unshakable. Think about how the human mind works. We are wired to look for patterns. When someone's words and actions align again and again, the mind feels secure. It says, I can rely on this, I can trust this, I can invest here. But when behavior is unpredictable, when promises are broken, when effort is inconsistent, the mind pulls back. Uncertainty creates distance. In relationships, this truth is everything. A man may feel drawn to your energy, but it is your consistency that teaches him how to treat you long term. If you show strength one day but accept less the next, your message becomes unclear. If you set standards but fail to hold them, he learns that your words carry no weight. But when you remain steady, when your actions never contradict your value, he cannot ignore it. He is forced to see that you live by what you believe. Consistency is also the foundation of self-respect. Each time you follow through on your standards, you confirm to yourself that you are serious about your worth. And that inner conviction radiates outward. It communicates without words, this is who I am, this is how I live, this is what I allow. And when people feel that certainty, they adjust. Think of how powerful habits shape a life. One workout does not transform a body. One healthy meal does not change a lifestyle. It is the repetition, the commitment, the daily choices that build lasting change. In the same way, one strong decision in love is not enough. It is the repetition of strength, the repetition of dignity, the repetition of boundaries that creates lasting respect. Men especially respond to consistency because it removes confusion. When you are clear, when you are steady, when you never shift based on emotion, they know exactly where they stand, and that clarity forces them to rise if they want to remain in your life. Inconsistency, on the other hand, gives them room to slip. It tells them, I can test her limits because sometimes she bends. But consistency closes that door. It tells them this is the standard every time. This does not mean being rigid or cold. Consistency is not about lack of compassion. It is about alignment. It is about living in a way where your actions always match your truth. When you say you value yourself, you prove it through what you accept. When you say you deserve respect, you prove it through how you respond to disrespect. When your actions mirror your words, your presence becomes undeniable. Psychology shows that people often remember not what you say, but how you made them feel over time. Consistency shapes that memory. If someone feels respected around you again and again, it becomes their truth. If someone feels they can mistreat you without consequence, that becomes their truth too. What you repeat teaches them what to expect. A man will fight for what feels stable. He will fight for what feels rare and steady. Inconsistency confuses, but consistency commands effort. It creates a standard that cannot be ignored. And when he realizes that you never waver in honoring yourself, he begins to rise to that same level. He knows that if he wants to keep you, he must be consistent too. But remember, consistency begins with yourself. It is not only about what he does, it is about what you do for your own growth. Are you consistent in loving yourself? Are you consistent in investing in your dreams? Are you consistent in showing up for your own life with the same energy you pour into others? Because when you live with that consistency, you naturally demand it in return. A relationship built on consistency is powerful because it removes doubt. It removes the roller coaster of uncertainty. It creates a solid ground where passion can grow without fear. And the person who benefits most is you, because you no longer live in confusion. You no longer wonder if your value will be recognized. You know it will, because your actions leave no room for anything else. So never underestimate the quiet strength of being consistent. Flashy moments fade, sweet words are forgotten, but steady action remains. A man may admire beauty, he may enjoy charm, but he commits to consistency, because consistency is what tells him she is serious about her worth. She will not lower herself. And if I want her, I must fight to meet her standard every single time. When you embody that truth, you no longer chase. You no longer beg. You no longer explain your value. You show it day after day through every choice you make. And that is what makes him fight for you. Not because you demanded it, but because your consistency left no other option. There always comes a moment in life when everything changes. A moment when you realize you are no longer the same person you once were. This is the turning point. It is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it comes quietly, in a single decision, a single thought, a single moment of clarity where you say to yourself, I will never go back to who I was. The turning point is powerful because it marks the death of old patterns. The days of begging, of tolerating, of waiting for someone to see your value, those days end here. It is the moment where you reclaim the pen and begin to write your own story. And when you reach this moment, everything in your relationship dynamic shifts. Psychology tells us that change becomes permanent when the pain of staying the same outweighs the fear of changing. Until that point, people tolerate situations that don't serve them. They stay because it is familiar. They bend because they are afraid. But when the discomfort becomes too heavy, the mind awakens, the heart rebels, and the soul whispers, "Enough." That whisper is the beginning of your turning point. At this stage, you no longer move with hesitation, you move with certainty. You no longer wonder if you are asking for too much. You finally see that you were asking for too little all along. You no longer wait for someone else to decide your value. You know your value, and when you know it, you stop living in fear of losing what was never stable to begin with. For a man, this is the moment he realizes that the ground beneath him has shifted. The version of you who tolerated inconsistency, who accepted half effort, who gave without receiving, is gone. In her place stands someone unshakable, and that realization shakes him, because psychology shows us that humans often take things for granted until the threat of loss awakens them. The turning point makes him see clearly she is no longer waiting. If I want her, I must fight. But the turning point is not about him. It is about you. It is the moment you break free from the cycle of trying to prove your worth. It is the moment you stop negotiating with yourself. It is the moment you stop asking for permission to be loved fully. And in that moment, your inner world changes. You feel stronger. You feel lighter. You feel untouchable. This change cannot be faked. It cannot be performed. It comes from within. When you reach this point, it shows in the way you walk, in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself. Without saying a word, you communicate, "I will no longer be taken for granted. I will no longer shrink to fit. I will no longer wait for love that costs me my peace." And that energy becomes undeniable. People notice, they feel it, they sense it even if you never mention it. A man who once thought you would always be there suddenly feels urgency. He feels the fear of losing something valuable. He feels the weight of knowing that you have changed and that change may not include him if he does not step up. That is why the turning point makes him fight. It confronts him with the possibility of being left behind. But the true beauty of this moment is not about what it makes others do. The beauty is how it transforms you. Because once you cross that line, once you step into your power, you never go back. You cannot return to the version of yourself who accepted less. You cannot unknow your worth. You cannot unsee the truth. You have risen too high to ever fall that low again. The turning point is liberation. It is freedom from self-doubt. It is freedom from chasing. It is freedom from the endless cycle of waiting to be chosen. At this stage, you realize you were chosen all along, by yourself. And that choice is the most important one you will ever make. And here is the secret: when you choose yourself, others are forced to choose you differently. A man who once gave the bare minimum suddenly feels the pressure to rise. A man who once took your presence for granted suddenly feels the urgency to hold on, because psychology shows that scarcity creates value. When you are no longer endlessly available, you become rare, and what is rare is always fought for. So honor your turning point, trust it, do not fear it. It is the universe's way of aligning you with the love you deserve. And remember this: every great story has a moment where the character transforms, where weakness becomes strength, where hesitation becomes courage. This is your story, and the turning point is your chapter of power. From this moment on, you no longer walk as someone waiting for love. You walk as someone who embodies love. You walk as someone who knows that being taken for granted is no longer an option. And when you carry yourself with that truth, the world shifts, the people around you shift, and the one who truly values you will have no choice but to fight to be part of your journey. When you finally reach the place where your self-worth is no longer negotiable, you win a victory that no one can take away. This is not the kind of victory that comes with applause or public recognition or a trophy. This is the victory of the soul. It is the victory of knowing you have risen above the version of yourself that once doubted, once settled, once waited for permission to be valued. The victory of self-worth feels different. It is quiet, but it is unshakable. It is not loud, but it echoes in every area of your life. It shows in the way you walk into a room. It shows in the way you handle challenges. It shows in the way you no longer need to convince anyone of who you are, because you already know. This victory rewires the mind. Psychology teaches us that the strongest beliefs are the ones we repeat to ourselves daily. When you consistently affirm your value, Your brain creates new pathways. Doubt weakens, fear loses power, and confidence grows stronger. Over time, this becomes your natural state. You no longer wake up questioning whether you deserve love or respect. You live as though it is your birthright, and that belief attracts everything you once thought was out of reach. What makes this victory so powerful is that it changes your relationships forever. A man can no longer treat you casually because your energy will not allow it. He cannot take you lightly because you radiate certainty. And if he tries, you do not argue, you do not beg, you do not explain, you simply step away. That calm strength speaks louder than words ever could. It says, I will not live below my value. And here is the truth. The moment you embody self-worth, you stop fearing loss. You stop fearing rejection. You stop fearing the idea of being alone. Because you realize that being alone while honoring yourself is far better than being with someone who diminishes you. That realization frees you. It removes the chains of desperation and gives you wings. And when you are free, you attract from a place of strength, not weakness. This victory also brings peace. You no longer fight battles that drain you. You no longer chase after people who run. You no longer explain to those who refuse to understand. Instead, you invest your energy in places that nourish you, in people who uplift you, and in dreams that inspire you. That shift creates a life of abundance. And abundance is magnetic. It draws love, success, and respect to you naturally. Understand this. When a man sees a woman who is anchored in self-worth, he sees someone rare, someone unforgettable, someone he cannot replace. Because most people in this world still question their value, still compromise, still bend out of fear. But when you rise above that, when you stand tall in your worth, you separate yourself from the rest. And rarity always commands effort. It always demands pursuit. It always inspires a fight. But the greatest part of this victory is not what it makes him do. It is what it makes you become. You become a leader of your own life. You become the author of your own story. You become the protector of your peace, the guardian of your dreams, and the keeper of your heart. And when you live this way, you stop surviving, you start thriving. The victory of self-worth does not mean you never face challenges. It does not mean everyone will treat you perfectly, but it does mean you have the strength to handle it differently. It means you know when to walk away. It means you know when to say no. It means you know when to protect your spirit. That power is priceless. That power is freedom. And here is the reward of this journey. You no longer wait to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. You no longer search for validation because you already validate yourself. You no longer wonder if you are enough because you live as though you are more than enough. That is the victory. That is the transformation. That is the moment your life changes forever. So let this truth settle deep inside you. Self-worth is not given, it is claimed. It is not dependent on who stays or who leaves. It is not built on approval or attention. It is built on the unshakable decision that you will never again abandon yourself. When you live with that decision, you become unstoppable. You become untouchable. You become unforgettable. And when a man stands before that kind of power, he has only two choices: rise to meet it or step aside. And if he chooses to rise, he will fight for you with everything he has. Not because you begged, not because you pleaded, but because your self-worth left no other option. That is the victory. That is the reward. That is the life you were always meant to live.